You mentioned ACT UP. Tell us about their activities and what they were like in the 80s and 90s, especially their militancy.
Look, they were a lot of allies and, of course, a lot of positive people too who said, we've got to do something. Governments have to provide research and get treatments happening. They need to support the AIDS Council and the care work that's needed. And it's a government health crisis. You can't just turn your back on it and say, leave it to the community, which is what they were doing, really, right up until the mid-'80s. It needed that kind of level of community, street protests and politicians being mocked, whether they liked it or not. It had to happen. We had to tell politicians, this is a serious problem. You need to treat this epidemic in different ways than you have in the past. You need to respect the gay and lesbian community, which of course we'd only got the gay. It was only legal to be gay in terms of the Victorian law from 1981. And so we were sort of a burgeoning community, and we didn't have resources, we didn't have the sort of, even what you might call the credence in the community. And until AIDS came along and forced a whole lot of these issues to be discussed more broadly in the press and in community in general.
Of course, ACT UP did some great direct actions. And I remember once they were at Parliament House in Canberra and one activist famously jumped onto the floor of Parliament when Bob Hawke and Brian Howe, I think, were standing. That must have had an incredible impact on the community insofar as people saying, we're here, we're not going away, we demand that you do these things to help us in this epidemic.
And the same thing, Maureen Lister was highly embarrassed. I can't remember if it was in Parliament or Parliament steps, and she cried about it because she knew, that we were right. And she was the health minister at the time in the Victorian government. So those sort of, not that I'm saying we, James, I wasn't there, of course. No one wanted to admit they were there because some of the stuff sort of bordered on being illegal, I suppose. But I think there was compassion in the community. People realised what was being done was necessary and, did raise a lot of consciousness in the community. Some people hated us because, I suppose that sometimes personal property might have not been destroyed, but, people might have crossed a few barriers they shouldn't have, such as jumping down on the floor of Parliament.
And the floral clock.
And the floral clock, you're right. You've got a good memory, James. Yes, that's right. The floral clock was destroyed and there was such an outcry. The press was sort of, how dare these vandals attack the floral clock? And some of the politicians reacted badly as if, this was an institution or something, when of course the flowers, from my understanding, the people who did it had found out from the gardeners that it was going to be replaced the following day anyway. It was not a big deal, but, it's amazing how you can have this confected outrage about things like that sometimes.